So at this point, I've covered a lot of material and I've done so fairly quickly. I suspect that there are probably some questions. So I'm going to turn this over to Nicole, who's going to moderate the Q&A session.
What is your thoughts on level 1 and the type of services that is offered at that level? Do you think this is too evolving? Level 2 type issues now being handled at the first level of support?
Yeah, level 1, over the last 5 years, level 1 employment has increased by 50%. If you look at level 1 technicians, they've grown by 50% over the last 5 years, and desktop support, what we would call level 2, has decreased by 20%. And this has happened through shift left. It's also happened through technology, remote tools like BombGuard and LogMeIn, and through improved knowledge management, and ultimately through better experience and training of the level 1 reps. So there's a lot that goes on at level 1 now that no one dreamed would be possible 5 years ago. The kind of resolution that's happening now because of the tools, the training, the experience, the technology that is available remotely to resolve incidents and service requests is astonishing. And so what is happening at level 1 now, the level of complexity of the incidents and service requests that can be resolved at level 1 is an order of magnitude greater than it was just 5 years ago. And it's due to this knowledge of shift left, and it's empowered by tools, training tools, and technology that enable far more to be done remotely than was historically possible. So what we're finding is a concentration of expertise at level 1 driven by tools. I mentioned some of them, knowledge tools, and remote diagnostic tools, driven by experience levels and driven by training, so that if you can do it at level 1, the cliche in the industry is get it done at level 1. There's real economic value there because the cost of resolving a fully loaded ticket at level 1 in North America last year was around $22, while the cost of resolving a desktop ticket was around $70. So if you can shift left, not just from desktop to level 1, but from vendor support all the way to level 1, or from N-level IT support back to level 1, and eventually to self-help, self-service, and eventually to level -2, that is seek and destroy. That is one of the ultimate objectives of a proactive support organization, is to eliminate these tickets at their source and eventually prevent them altogether, prevent incidents and service requests from even happening through these search and destroy technologies.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Just questions are coming in. Nice compliments, Jeff. Awesome presentation, impressive speaker, eloquent, crystal clear expo. Very nice. So expose, very nice compliments. Thank you, everybody. Jeff, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Over the next, over the last 10 years, what has surprised you the most? What trend?
I would say it's the emergence of ROI as a dominant metric in service and support. It wasn't even on the radar 10 years ago. Everything was tactical 10 years ago. Better, faster, cheaper. Let's react to this environment as quickly as we can. Let's make the customer as happy as we can. Let's maximize first contact resolution rate. And let's get our costs down as much as possible. But about that same time, 10 years ago, people started to think about more broadly, what is the strategic intent of service and support? Because everything seems so reactive and tactical. And companies like MetricNet started to think about a broader purpose for service and support. And that broader purpose is to make end users more productive. That's the #1 goal of any service and support organization, is to return productivity, even if you're in an external environment, meaning B2C, B2B support. If you're supporting an external customer, you're trying to return productivity to them, and especially if you're in enterprise support, internal users, you're trying to return productivity to them. So I would say that the emergence of ROI as a driving principle, as an underlying purpose for service and support, that wasn't even on the radar 10 years ago. And so that, I won't say it came out of nowhere, but it's really driving the market now. And I would say that, and I spoke on one of my slides about this, service and support as a business. When you think about service and support as a business, you're thinking about ROI, because any successful business is going to have an ROI well in excess of 100%. And I mentioned earlier that some of the more effective support organizations are able to achieve ROIs well in excess of 500%. Through shift left, through channel mix, and by returning productive hours to end users. So I would say that The number one mega trend that wasn't on my radar 10 years ago that's front and center today is this notion of ROI, and the fact that every decision made in service and support today has to be made with an eye towards maximizing and increasing the ROI, whether it's the adoption of new technology, whether it's maturing processes and going for idle hacks, idle shortcuts. That's an ROI play. I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of money that has been spent historically on idle training and certification and assessments and whatnot, and a lot of organizations are simply saying enough is enough. We're just going to go directly for the result. We're going to take a shortcut and we're going to go for an end result as quickly as we can to get to that ROI. To give you an example, Nicole, we have a client that a little over a year ago was handling about 165,000 incidents per month. This is a huge insurance company. And through effective problem management, that is looking at problems that had a large number of incidents attached to them and eliminating those incidents from a root cause perspective, they were able to reduce their total incident volume by more than 60% in a 12-month period of time. That's a massive, that has an enormous ROI because you're eliminating more than half the workload that they had a little over a year ago. And so this idea that ROI becomes the purpose and the main driver of service and support, that surprised me because, as I mentioned, it wasn't really even on my radar 10 years ago, but now it's front and center, and it is really the driving purpose of this industry today.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I have a couple more coming in if you have a few more minutes. What is the most effective ITSM framework that organizations can follow today?
You know, there are a lot of IT service management frameworks out there. Of course, ITIL is probably the best known framework. You know my opinion on that. I talked about how ITIL 3 evolved into ITIL 4, which was launched in February this year. I felt ITIL 3 was too complex. It had 24 processes in it, but ITIL 4 has 36 practices in it. What I was hoping for was a streamlining of ITIL, a simplification of ITIL, more of an ITIL hack approach, and more of a results-oriented approach, because all the process maturing in the world doesn't do you a bit of good unless it results in something that's better, faster, cheaper, and improves your ROI. It is the dominant paradigm in IT service management. When you think about frameworks, ITIL is the dominant paradigm. But what I would encourage everybody on this webcast today to do is to follow your instincts and think about common sense solutions. This is how ITIL hacks came about. When organizations said, you know, we're spending tens of millions of dollars a year through all this certification and training and assessments and whatnot, why don't we just figure out a way to shortcut this process? We know what problem management's about. We know what knowledge management's about. We know what incident management and release management and change management. We know what these things are all about. So why don't we just take the end result, adapt it to our unique organization, take the shortcut and get there as quickly as we can, but let's expect results in days or weeks, not in months or years or never. And so in terms of frameworks, ITIL will continue to be the big framework in this industry, but I would encourage you to think about ITIL shortcuts, ITIL hacks, and above all, think common sense, because there's nothing terribly complicated in this industry other than the solutions that you provide to your customers. Most of what happens in service and support is very common sense. And if you're driven by this overarching principle of returning productive hours to end users, that is maximizing the ROI, and also channel mix and shift left channel mix, that is deflecting contacts into lower cost channels and shifting left over time. If you keep these principles in mind, your common sense will guide you to a framework that works well in your environment. You don't have to slavishly follow the ITIL 4 framework or the ITIL 3 framework or any other framework, PDCA, for example, or Six Sigma or any of those. Use your common sense and keep in mind that ROI through shift left channel mix and return productivity 2 hours should be your overarching goal.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I just wanted to touch on next month's webinar, and it's one of the topics that you actually spoke about today, was AI. Next month's webinar, a high-level presentation, will be with Dan Turgeon with A Sound. Dan will be presenting the top 6 tips for success with artificial intelligence. So you did touch on that, and that's our kind of our next webinars for next month. So please join us. No other questions are coming in. Jeff, did you have anything else that you'd like to discuss? It is 12 o'clock, and I know people at well, you're probably going to bed because it's
No, I've
12
got one more
o'clock.
I've got one more webinar to do.
Oh,
Even though
wow.
I'm in the Philippines, I still work on U.S. time, so I'm
Wow.
doing fine. But
Well,
no, my final comments are to thank you for moderating this, and the audience, those of you who are still on, I want to thank you for spending this hour with me. I know your time's very valuable, and the fact that you took this time to listen in on this webcast means a lot to me, and I thank you so much. I do hope that you found this insightful and interesting, and found some information in here that you can use to further your careers and your professional lives. So thank you so much for attending.
great. Thank you, Jeff. And of course, this will be on our website. The recording and the slides will be on our website shortly. We appreciate you, Jeff, for staying up late and that you're going to stay up a little bit longer. So we hope for a good rest for you and safe travels back to the U.S. So thank you so much. Everybody have a great afternoon, and we'll hope to see you next month at next month's webinar. Thanks again.
You.